Good afternoon, PA Figs here. So it's that time of the year. We've had a couple of heavy frosts, and it's time to prune our trees and put them away for the winter. Here in Pennsylvania, we can't leave them out. It gets too cold over the winter, so we store them in our attached garage where it stays about 40-50 degrees and dark, and they hibernate throughout the winter. So you can see Teresa's helping me. She's picking off all the figs. For the most part, a lot of them are just falling off right now that the frost has hit. There's no chance of them ripening out here. I have no more room in my greenhouse. I could shuffle them in and out of the garage, but it's pretty much the time of year where I've given up on outdoor figs. So I'll still get some good ones out of the greenhouse, but for now it's time to clean up a little bit. So you can see we're going and picking off all the figs. We'll pick off all the figs, and then we'll shape the tree. See, some of these were really close to ripening, but just didn't get there. It's kind of heartbreaking to see these Prados that were so close. And, you know, lesson learned, next year I should thin them out a little bit more. You know, maybe if I took a third or 2/3 of these figs off earlier, the other ones may have ripened. So, lesson learned for next year. Alright, we're going to go finish that up, and we'll be back. Alright, so now we need to prune the tree. There's no exact science to prune the tree, it's more of an art form. It's how do you want the tree to look this season, into next season, into the season beyond. So the important part is you don't want too many branches shading out the other branches. The second thing that's probably the hardest part of pruning fig trees is to remember it's not like an apple where you leave this branch and then the fruit comes off of these. If you leave this tip, this branch is going to continue to grow this way. So if I wanted to leave this branch, but I wanted it to grow vertical, I would actually find a node, and it's hard to see probably, but there's a node right here pointing this way. I'd find one pointing in the direction I'd want, and then I'd cut the branch halfway between that node and the next node, so that this is the first viable node. And then next spring, hopefully that node will branch up and start to continue this whole limb here. Another school of thought is that you'll cut off the dominant bud here, and then you'll have multiple buds come off of this one branch to give you a lot of figs. As you can see, Preto is a very heavy bearer. You don't need a lot of branches to get a lot of fruit unless you want to reduce to just a few fruit per branch. So my original plan on this one was to have the main trunk go up and then have alternating branches off of it. And you can see what happened during the year. We just got these branches, these ones that came out of the dirt here and started to outgrow the main scaffolding of the tree. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to stick with my main scaffold with the branches coming off of it, but I'm going to leave 1, 2, 3 branches, and I'm going to air layer them in the spring. Best intentions, at least. So let's go ahead and start pruning those. First I need to get a bag and label it and get ready, so I'll be right back. Alright, I've got Teresa. She's got a bag well labeled, so remember what variety is what as we prune the trees. And I always leave one node when I cut. And, you know, I don't know if that's necessary. The reason I do it is the wood always dies back one node, and I don't want it dying back to the main trunk. Maybe I don't have to worry about that. To me, it always worries me that it's going to die back to the main trunk. It's going to get rot, and it's going to rot through the main trunk. So I always leave one node. Okay, and you see this is too big of an air layer, or a cutting to really ship, or even if I'm potting these up myself, I'm not going to want them this big. So I try to cut them to about 6 inches. Sometimes they're a little bit bigger, and depending on the size of the package, I'll either leave it that size or ship it. And I can tell you, it's heartbreaking to cut off some of these large branches, but it's really what you have to do if there's a certain shape that you want. Along with that, I try to get these Prados into the greenhouse early because they take such a long time to ripen. So the more width I have, the less I can fit in the greenhouse. So I'll cut off a lot of these branches as well. it's hard to do. I mean, you know, a lot of people have Prados that aren't even this big, so to cut that off is it's tough, but you got to do it or else your trees are going to get be monstrous. Alright, so this one I'm going to leave on to air layer. Here's my two first branches, and you can see, I think because of the weight of the figs, the branch is kind of curled down. It's not exactly what I wanted, so I'm going to find the best point, I think, to get them to grow a little bit more this way or a little more this way. I think I'm going to stick with this branch here in hopes that it'll come out kind of like this. And the dog saying hi to the neighbors. Hold on. Alright, so yeah, I want this tree limb to grow up this way if possible, so I'm going to cut off all the rest of these. And hopefully this will grow this way now. I'm going to actually leave this one because if that one doesn't take off, this one's in the same sort of direction. It's pretty weak, it may not make it through the winter, but I'm going to leave that and see what happens. Second branch, if this one's going to grow this way, I don't really want this one to grow over top of it. So I'm going to cut this guy off. This one here will grow up or out, and I think it looks like it's going to grow upwards, so I'm going to leave that one. This one here is growing off to the side. I really want it to grow up, so I'm going to cut it and hope that that makes that grow up or out. The next node grows up, this one grows out, and I'm going to remove this, so I'm going to cut it back a little more actually. Okay. This branch is going to be air layered, I'm going to leave it alone. Now this one here, this is supposed to be my main scaffolding, and you can see it's going a little bit crooked. So this is where I get torn, and do I want it to just grow out to the side like that and maybe curve it back, give it some funky shape, or do I want to cut it back in hopes that it grows up again? I think what I'm going to do is just trim it lightly and hope that a bud forms somewhere in here in the spring, and then I could trim it back. I don't want to take out this much of my growth off my Prado. I don't think it would damage it, but I want to keep it going. So, alright, this branch will go here. This will be removed as an air layer, so that one's good. This one goes back towards the center. There's really nothing else there. I'm okay with that. This one here will shade out this lower branch, so I'm going to cut that. And then this guy here, I might leave just in case I can't get this to straighten back out. I may actually try to bend this back and form it into like an S shape in the spring. So I'm going to leave that too. Let me show you the other side. Alright, so for the other side, got this guy here. I've got a branch coming down. That's going to do me no good, so that guy's gone. And here's my main branch that I want to grow this way. So these two are going the right direction. This guy's going out to the side, don't need him. This little one I'll leave on, we'll see what happens. This guy will be air layered in the spring. And then we've got this guy. So this guy's forming down. It's got two coming up, one coming down. I'm going to get rid of the one headed downwards. And that'll hopefully leave these two to come back up in the spring. Okay, so now that's all been done. I've got a thing of wood glue, and what I like to do is that anywhere I made a cut, I like to seal it with a little bit of wood glue. I didn't do this last year. I can't say my trees suffered completely, but I did notice they spent a lot of energy trying to seal those wounds throughout the winter. So I'm hoping that by doing this, it'll allow the tree to save all of its energy and put it towards growing roots and just hibernating and preparing for next year nice and strong to get it a good start in the spring. So I'm just going to seal up all these cuts, be real liberal with the glue. And what's the worst that happens? I waste a little wood glue, no big deal. Okay, so that is it for my this Preto, and we'll move on to the next one. Alright, so we're moving on to the next tree, Green Esquia. And you can see Teresa's got the bucket of figs. It's a 5-gallon bucket that we've emptied probably every other tree. Just there's been that many figs left on. We had that early frost that came through. It was a real hard frost too, and pretty much wiped out all the growth of the figs. So, alright, I'm not going to talk through this one as much, but I'm going to start chopping. One other important thing to remember is label your fig trees. So I've got multiple labels on this one. One's a metal label, one's another metal label with just paint pen on it. And then what I always do, it's hard to see on the other side, it says Green Esquia. But I always like to go with my paint pen. And actually I'm going to use I have paint pen on the other side. This side I'm going to use a black Sharpie. And I always label my fig trees this way, because those metal labels tend to fade, fall off, and then you don't know what your tree is. Paint pen, the Sharpie lasts a good 2 years. I tend to touch them up each spring, each fall, just to make sure. Last thing I want is a fig tree that I'm not aware of, or what the name is. Alright, so this Green Esquia has grown kind of funky. You can see it's got a lot of suckers coming off. I think I want to leave that main tree, or that main limb, and then this main limb. Hesitant on this limb just because it goes so far out to the side, but I think I'm going to leave it. This is one that I have to get in the greenhouse. I didn't put it in the greenhouse very early this year, and I didn't get very many ripe figs off of it because they took so long. By far, my longest ripening fig. Takes a huge amount of time for the Green Esquia to ripen. Alright, so let's see. Let's just start going through here. My wife has a bag. I forgot to label it, so I'll have to label it when we're done here. Again, about 6 to 12 inches for the cuttings. The only difference is I'll leave them a bit longer if I'm going to immediately put them into soil to try to root. Alright, and every once in a while you just gotta kind of step back and envision what you want your structure to be next year. Not where you want all your branches to have figs on them, but the structure. Your branches with the figs will grow off of this structure next year. Remember, figs grow, with the exception of Brebas, the main crop of figs grow off of new growth. So really all you want to leave is your skeleton, and then let your new branches with the figs come off of that skeleton next year. I still have not gotten the heart to be able to prune as heavy as I probably should, but each year I tend to get a little bit better, and a little more confident with it, and don't leave as many branches on. A pro would probably take just this branch by itself, cut everything else off, and just this branch and cut everything else off. Me, I like to leave some backups just in case I'm just not comfortable yet after a few years of growing figs to really prune as heavily as you're probably supposed to. So let's keep going through here.
No, there's a hole.
There's a hole in the bag. That's great. Alright, so next year I want something to come off this way in this tree here. So I think I'm actually going to leave this branch and let that come off. A lot of suckers on this tree. I air layered a few of them. There's still quite a few. Alright, so you get the idea. I'm going to pause it and I'll show you the end result. Alright, so here's the end result. I did basically what I felt comfortable with, which was I want to have these two main branches, and then this guy will continue to grow next year this way. This guy will continue to grow that way. This guy out here. This one here I'm going to leave and let it grow just a couple of inches, maybe 4 or 5 leaves in the spring, and then chop that. And I'm really hopeful that these guys will all branch out like this. This guy here I'll let grow up a little bit and then I'll chop him. So that's the hope. We'll see what happens next year. That's the green skia.